shortly because sometimes things just don't end up playing nicely. Well, we'll do the digital percussive maintenance there in any case. But in the meantime, there is still a lot of different things going on. But the way that this would be, yeah, the 46-page settlement valid for 8 years specifically, and specifically that federal immigration officials will not be able to use illegal entry charge against parents to separate them from their children. Now, this was be arguably one of the things that was happening in the midst of the, again, the Trump administration as a argued as a punitive measure of something. And of course, there were other arguments happening around the lines of, well, we don't know who these relationships are, what they are a part of it. But again, it was enough to become a class action suit. So we'll be doing, as we have been seeing, some backtracking by the Biden administration specifically about having to deal with policies that they had vowed never to touch from the Trump administration, potentially hampering those or any future administration, because being 8 years, that will be hampering certainly whatever administration comes next, as we are past then the timing out of this administration, at the very least, regardless of how the 2024 election ends up going. So, with that, we're going to go ahead and take that first break of this hour now. We got a few more things going on, but we'll take a moment here to make sure we're trying to get everything going on with our social media. I do appreciate those of y'all sticking around with us, even if things are being a little bit difficult over on that end. But we'll keep talking about the things, and regardless of how we do, we're up in all mediums. We are for this purpose, talking about the things going on and affecting us here in the borderland after this break. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso, and of course, got our guests coming up as well to talk about many of the things going on and in-depth reporting with El Paso Inc. after this break. But again, you are tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A whole lot more going on, a whole lot more we'll talk about, and a whole lot more developments and other news happening in the borderland right after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming to the free and reliable iHeartRadio. Still got a lot of ways to attempt on the show. Today, so that's where we also develop as we appreciate it. I think it's harder now. So dealing with that, well, yeah, we had a whole bunch of the movies and energies and the background. Well, we're still doing it. We're up all of that for a second here. Of course, we don't have. I think we're really getting that public yeah, that's the thing. I'm like already aware. Always because a lot of elections itself. But yes, that one is that one is that. Is that there is that every lost on his ballot? There are at least even if the global elections like a votes 14 votes 20 right for the regional district and the major one, the one that major attention. I don't know. It's statewide for sure. It's becoming absolutely something that the state of the state a little bit more throughout the rest of this week too. Yeah, we're going to get social media also so you can there. That's not getting nice. That's not like no. It's going to hold waste of what people get out of it, including the other social media, but also I think it's really difficult. I want to still get online. I have to do this again sometimes because it doesn't play a lot. Reason so long, in any case, things going on that we want to talk about is that on the roadway that even as we're going into here, you know, new word gave us we got a hit and run because I grabbed your downtown Paso having a out for like Kansas from your lights on and it was a possible serious conditions so they're that's one but a couple more and we were very serious for your on roadway over 90 basically 1%. You can get by I tell you by the he does investigated all the close there on 10 it has now been it has to be up in your FPS folder, but location there are stations online that's not 1,000 in my opinion about there being it should be vibration control along with that low zero that explorers are quite a lot of original residents but there's more than not too long yes okay actually I'm going to head back to one of the one of the other guys over there so that's all was a question that I hope you can find my opinion but one that was not related to it but the 6 good ones 6 is different so I hope last El Paso specifically having used for those water talking about for a cold capacity so no rises in the that's one thing that's not one we want to miss that I want maybe that's semi so so sitting there what was it you what you have to work to the hospital just seen like what more so that's it again because I don't know still have excited I was with that social media but so yeah that best to the rest of the side the local community and the reporting. That happens that next one. On social media, social media. Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the Frame Live iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We're doing our best with some of the social media difficulties over there, but in any case, we are definitely having some issues, but still commenting in there. I do appreciate y'all still sticking around with us as much as possible anyway, as we're dealing with those, again, social media bugaboos. But in the meantime, still plenty of things to talk about and to go into, and that are certainly affecting us here in the borderlands. So joining us as we do usually most first Tuesdays of the month, but it's been, well, here at the moment, but other things going on here. We do have right now Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., joining us here in the studio to talk about some of the in-depth reporting and interesting stories going on in and around the region right now. So, Robbie, thanks for joining us here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Andrew.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about the things, because there's, of course, by no means, I mean, your outlet, my outlet, the other outlets in town, by no means the only things going on and being talked about around town, but you have a very interesting cover story out of this most recent week that is something that a lot of our listeners may not have totally paid attention to, but it's kind of something that, well, a lot of people are. So it's you did a kind of an in-depth investigation into, and it's not something I expected to be talking about anytime soon, but hey, it's there. Inside FitFam, the anonymous El Paso social media account that rules Instagram, at least locally speaking, right?
So do you follow FitFam, Andrew?
I kind of aggressively ignore it. People send me stuff from it a lot, so I guess I kind of do by proxy.
Well, that would make you one of their 356,000 followers, about half of the city's population. So we did have a bit of a debate in the newsroom whether we should pursue a story, particularly since hilarious to serious and tragic with news-like content sort of mixed in. I mean, there's migrant chases, cars in flames along freeways, robberies, drunken tirades, student antics, and nearly every shade of mayhem within distance of a person with a smartphone. I mean, it's an eclectic mix of stuff.
So, I mean, it's kind of whatever is the most interesting or catching the most eyeballs is kind of the way I think of it. There have been, previous such chants, like depending on where you spent your time online, like World Star or Jerry, those kind of, like, it seems like it's in that kind of vein of either those things would apply or anywhere in between. It may or may, depending on someone's filming it or not, may end up on FitFam. Is kind of the way I thought about it.
All right. So, I mean, why should we care about this? I mean,
that's a very good question.
The reason is, like I said, one, I mean, about half the city follows this, and then also they do mix in news-like content, so there is serious content there, and
sure.
It's also 100% anonymous. So, it provided an opportunity for us to put some tough questions to them, to learn a bit more about the money behind it, about who is behind it, about how they, about the lack of accountability. I mean, being in the news business, this, Andrew. I mean,
sure.
Everything we do is, transparent. So when you see advertisement in the paper or you read a story, you know who's behind it and who's producing it. And, the moment an ad is in our paper and it's not properly disclosed who's behind it, I can tell you we will have angry readers contact us, and rightly so if that happens. So, I mean, accountability is important. So we did take the time as well to talk to some media experts as well about some of the issues. And then this is really a national thing. It's been going on for a while in terms of how people are and just the importance of being smart when you do that about where your content is coming from.
Yeah, and knowing who is producing it and their interests can be significant. And I mean, let's get a couple things straight here. Often the idea of about anonymity is certainly an important discussion, and whenever it happens in well, most traditional media or other media outlets, the way it works is that if there is an anonymous report or something coming from that, it's not that or like a letter editor, those kind of things. The policies may vary by slightly by outlet, but the general idea is that the people producing it, putting out that final product, they know who we are talking about. They will not just take a random letter or a random tip. If we're citing a source, it's something that can be known. Sources can, have a, layer of protection between them. That has been a very important part of journalistic law, actually, and First Amendment rights when it comes down to it. But it's about that the person producing it has some kind of knowledge or information about where these sources are coming from in order to then put it out in a what they believe to be is then on their reputation reasonable and reliable manner.
Right. I mean, part of why it takes us a bit longer to produce the news is it takes time to, provide important context. I mean, facts can be misleading when they're not put in context. I mean,
Sure.
to verify information, we have to provide multiple points of view. All those things take time, and sometimes that can be missing when something gets posted quickly to social media. Of course, there are benefits there. I mean, there's things that we see through social media and people
Sure.
reporting them that we would never see otherwise.
And that has been one of the parts of kind of the digital revolution that has come along, not quite in the realm of FitFam on its own, but another way I've often put it in have newsroom discussions previously was around the lines of that often it's, I'm not going to call this in the realm of like tabloid journalism necessarily, but often things like that, such as, oh, I don't know, there's a number of outlets that come to mind, but the ones that do like, celebrity journalism sometimes will be on the edge of breaking news, and sometimes will even be ahead of like traditional news outlets. But sometimes there's enough times that it's been like, oh, well, they may have jumped on a rumor too fast to make it, like TMZ comes to mind here, is that oftentimes they will be even minutes or hours ahead of others, but then there's a level of verification and simply trustworthiness that can be lost in translation sometimes.
Yeah, I can. And we also wanted to know a bit more about who was behind the account. So we spoke to them. We did an interview. So
Yeah.
having even a very very popular Instagram account isn't enough to support yourself. And they basically told us that we aren't making as much through this as people might imagine. It's not like there's a big revenue stream through Instagram, but they do sell advertising. And one surprising number here is you wonder kind of where the content comes from as well.
True.
And in this case, they said they work in shifts to filter through an estimated 1,000 daily messages they receive from the community. So a lot of it's submitted to them. And it's becoming more difficult on social media with deep fakes, those sorts of things.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh,
it's
yeah.
very, very easy to change the timestamp on a video and post it out as like something current when it happened like 2 years ago, or change the location. Actually, we did that as part of our story. The reporter who did the story actually we didn't post anything to deceive people, but just went through the process of changing a timestamp and a location stamp on a video to see what it would take, and it's very easy to do.
Yeah, and even as that technology gets more widespread and more available, it'll be a question of being able to sift through that. That is going to be probably a nightmare for courts before too long here. So, and again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. And so, talking about this very interesting cover story y'all have from this most recent edition, but there are some of the other topics that we have often discussed, including a lot of development news happening around town. One of the stories that y'all have been following what's going on with the headquarters building over there at Helen of Troy. That is an interesting note that has finally happened with an otherwise present, but now looking to essentially significantly expand Borderland Enterprise taking ownership of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's official. We first reported some months ago that, first of all, that Helen of Troy was looking to downsize, which was fairly significant news for the only publicly traded company here in El Paso.
Right.
And then they did move through with the sale. They'll lease back a portion of that building, I believe. Or actually, no, they're looking for new headquarters, to be clear. They'll be moving to another, they'll lease offices here in El Paso.
Okay.
And Eaton has purchased the facility.
So yeah, Eaton that is currently kind of present over there in what I consider the Northwest Industrial Park. All of the warehouses that are around essentially the West Town Marketplace is what we're
But
talking
if
at
you've
this
gone
point.
to a hardware store recently about a light switch or any sort of electrical equipment that involves light switches, that sorts of things, you probably have seen their brand.
Yeah, so they're going to be expanding into that, and yeah, that is a significant-ish enough update with Helen of Troy. They're looking at kind of regionalizing some of their operations and
Hmm.
headquarters for it, and that the original story, the way we had talked about it anyway in recent months, had been about leasing back some of the space, but now it looks like they're just going to kind of move out of that building entirely. Then,
Yeah, so their headquarters will remain here in El Paso, but they have uh, shrunk their presence over time here, so they don't need as large of a facility.
and yes, as the question comes up every time I end up mentioning this, no, the outlet store is not coming back in any time.
No, it's not. Sorry to say.
So, but that's only one of the major things going on in other development news. Groundbreaking, so new things going on as opposed to downsizing or realignment. There has finally been movement as of this in recent weeks on that entertainment and performance venue space hybrid kind of thing. You all have some pretty good diagrams actually of it in this most recent edition of what is going to be coming on for that performance. Again, all of the entertainment things going on with that is now broken ground across from Sunland Park Racetrack and Casino.
Yeah, and to be clear, there's actually now two
Right.
entertainment venues moving forward. So I guess you could say there's a non-zero chance that Sunland Park, New Mexico will have two entertainment venues before the city of El Paso has its voter-approved one. It was a bit of a
Yeah.
surprise to us. I mean, we had done some reporting about a year ago about they're looking to change the name, but what was called the Pavilion,
Right.
which is a music venue. And last week we learned that another project is moving forward. The Heritage Group, a commercial real estate firm, broke ground on Independent Nation.
Yeah, Independent Nation, and that's going to be one that has, frankly, there's a lot going into
It's pretty
it.
eclectic.
Yeah, so just to name a few, as you all are reporting on it, among other things, a performance venue, a cannabis superstore and consumption lounge, pickleball courts, VR rooms, and space for concert, parties, and events. And it's a significant project, $35 to $40 million in scope.
Yeah, that's right. It sounds like it's going to be pretty large and pretty eclectic. I'm not sure exactly what even to call it. I think they're referring to it as sort of an entertainment venue. I mean, it looks like some mixture between entertainment and sort of a shopping venue. I mean, there'd be a restaurant,
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
kind of the place to go and spend most or all of a day, kind of thing, depending on if you use that cannabis superstore part of it.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's part of the anchor of that project.
Yeah, which is, I mean, of course, being Sunland Park and right down Sunland Park Drive, that is over in New Mexico. And there has been somewhat of a boom, I want to say, out of the last year's full revenues that was seen for cannabis enterprises in the state of New Mexico. Las Cruces ended up being a bit higher than, well, it being the biggest, locality in the area, being higher than either Chaparral or Sunland Park, though both of those last two were also kind of creeping up in its own way.
Yeah, so that project is expected to take about 14 months. We thought it was also a good idea to follow up with the investors behind
Sure.
what was known as the Pavilion to find out, like, is this too much stuff moving forward, like two entertainment complexes? But the focus of that venue is a bit different. It will primarily be a music concert venue. So the investors behind it are aiming for 5,200 to 6,000 seats. I think they're looking at more of an indoor sort of arena style venue. We're talking a $65 million to $75 million investment.
Okay.
Also out there by Sunland Park Racetrack and Casino and the amusement park out there.
And so this has led to, along with some of the other conversations about things in development, the people they've been seeing, that's one thing I've seen on BitFam has been or been sent to me from BitFam anyway, has been the changes going on over at the now former Sunland Park Mall. Now these shops at Solana, like the changes of like the horse heads and all that stuff moving around. And so this has been something that I've been kind of theorizing about for a while now, but of the possible transformation of Sunland Park Drive, particularly once they start getting into the mall and mall adjacent areas, into this whole entertainment corridor and the idea of the particular drawdown into Sunland Park. I mean, there was the racetrack. There has been Western Playland there for a minute now, and those have been draws in their own right. But the really like kind of anchoring these things, really seeing more at that end of it, could really kind of see or lead to a continued transformation of this whole space, particularly with again the shops at Solana. It's revamping focus also not just on a a place to go shopping, but a place to go and do stuff as well, as seen by some of the stuff that has popped up around there, whether it be the Monkey Rock location or the technically in the mall, but right next to it, Urban Air, where the old Toys R Us used to be. So there's a lot of more than just go and buy stuff to go and hang out places kind of mentality that is kind of popping up all along Southern Park Drive.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the shifts you're seeing is a focus on entertainment. That's something to bring people out to malls, retail. So restaurants or pickleball courts or music venues, those sorts of things. The you mentioned the interactive aquarium.
Oh, that too. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of that coming. So, in your estimation, I mean, this is cloudy crystal ball time overall, but does it seem like from all of this stuff that has been in development along there, that could be a viable concept going forward, or barely something that can be marketed
It could
on?
be. I mean, you see these developments announced, and you kind of hope that they move forward and come to fruition. But with these things, you always just kind of have to wait and see as it moves forward.
Yeah, though hopefully maybe not as long as, I mean, with some of the groundbreaking going on. And well, just to juxtapose it with, again, as y'all end up mentioning, with that non-zero chance of there being two venues in Sunland Park as opposed to the one that has still been languishing after those years of now some of the ended lawsuits, though with some of the rumblings coming out of the city of El Paso, I'm just going to call it potential for more, depending on what buildings, even if completely owned by the city and Sun Metro, are going to be under the gun. Possibly, again, there's a lot of speculation already going on here, but there's been some reporting in the area about even some notable locations near downtown El Paso being up for a renewed focus of a downtown arena. So there are different issues with these developments we've been talking about as opposed to what the city had been previously and may continue to focus on.
Yeah, and that's still a very different project than what we're talking about here. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
specifically a downtown arena. I mean, this is something that we're talking more like an arcade, cannabis superstore, VR rooms, pickleball, that sort of thing. It is entertainment, but we're not talking about like an arena like the city
No, yeah.
maybe envisioning.
Yeah, sports anchor tenants don't really make sense for the scope of either of the projects we've been talking about right now. But again, as more options are being talked about, it's interesting. Though there's another entertainment one as a kind of under the crane watch total thing that y'all been reporting out. Gamescape rather by Cinemark, looking to put in a new concept here. So Cinemark, I mean, pretty synonymous with part of the cinema industry in town, and of course nationally, looking to bring something a bit different to the area.
Yeah, that's something new. We got wind of plans last week by Cinemark. We're talking the national theater chain here, of course, to develop a new concept in El Paso. So we reached out to the company. We're able to confirm its plans. Like you said, it's called Gamescape by Cinemark. There aren't a lot of details at this point, but the El Paso location could be its first. According to the public filings, we're talking a $20 million investment, and here's what we're talking about: 7 movie auditoriums, 18 bowling lanes, and an arcade, rock climbing, laser tag, and a bar and dining area. This one would be out on the far east side by the big Amazon fulfillment center.
Oh, okay, so yeah, the East Lake area sounds like in that kind of region. So
Right.
it's an interesting concept here, and dealing with just the renaming of a gamescape. So still movie theaters involved in it, but more of a also other stuff to do. So not just go to a movie and leave, but go to a movie, hang around, and do other stuff, which is it's interesting because there was at least the one that moved, the one bowling alley I used to go to all the time there on Sunland Park, that one closed. So I thought like, oh, well, I guess that's not a viable concept in El Paso. But then I feel like in the meantime, there have been umpteen other places that have that, but also other things that have cropped up since, basically, including this concept here.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get a lot of details from Cinemark on this one, but we did talk to a spokesperson who basically said El Paso is a fantastic market, and we're really excited to bring Gamescape to the local community. It's always interesting when you see a national chain like this test a concept here in El Paso. I'm not sure exactly what they're looking at in this market, but I could speculate. We're a younger market, lots of families, family-friendly kind of city. These sort of entertainment, things for family to do. Tend to do really well here.
And again, the continued focus on El Paso with this is an interesting one because as much as we've seen further business investments also going on, one that we didn't talk about directly, but Snyder finally had their ribbon cutting for their new facility over there in that Westtown area we were talking about, including a visit by the governor during the time we were out, so we didn't report on it as directly. But still, it's interesting that we continue to see both entertainment and business, both movement and investment in the region.
Yeah, that one by Schneider Electric is more related to manufacturing. We've seen a lot of growth in that, but it's a lot for us to keep up with.
Yeah, no, definitely is. And one of the other ones that y'all reporting on this week that is, and could have other, I don't know, development news centering around it over at UTEP about how some of these, NIL deals and the idea of particularly, well, basically paying student athletes, which is still it has had its day in court and continues to be debated and argued over, but some movement happening essentially that could be affecting, well, compensation for UTEP athletes specifically.
Right. So far, the entity that's making that happen, we're talking a private entity. This isn't
Hmm.
affiliated with UTEP, but it's called the Minor Collective. It's led by Steve Haskins, who's the son of legendary UTEP coach Don Haskins.
Hmm.
He was named to that position in June. So this is all fairly new, although folks watching TV have probably started to see some ads that do feature UTEP athletes, particularly from the UTEP men's basketball team. But we really wanted to dig a little bit more into the business side of this, how athletes were getting paid, what this means for the local businesses here, as well as recruitment, because in some cases there's a lot of money involved here.
No, that is very true. And I mean, okay, if one thing can be seen even outside of the local area has been that realignment happening with college sports and college football in particular, but college sports overall, in which there's always been kind of known that college sports programs for higher education in general have been cash cows, particularly when we start getting into the broadcast contracts. And the West's been one of the major movements for the realignment, as particularly household names, Notre Dame, Northwestern, and other ones come to mind off the top of being like, well, we've been kind of shackled to these contracts and we're not getting our due out of it. And now as it's come out with, again, some of those cases, including involving the NCAA and others, about saying, okay, there is, well, student athletes are the backbone of this. And without there being the rules that have previously existed of, well, there can be no compensation, otherwise they no longer count as student athletes, they then count as professionals, can no longer compete in these leagues, those kind of things. As we're seeing, these are sea changes. These are complete shifts of gravitational poles that are essentially happening within this sport. And so seeing some of that start coming down in the local level is, at the very least, interesting to me because, with the idea of that compensation happening, it's, again, you look from one decade to the next, it's a completely different picture.
What we're talking about here are student athletes being paid for the use of their name, image, and likeness. These are known as NIL deals. And in this case, the Minor Collective has put together a pool that's somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000. There's a 5,000 minimum for investors, businesses to join this collective. And then the student athletes get paid that are part of this, get paid on basically a quarterly basis for the use of their name, image, and likeness. Now, let me put this into context in terms of the size of some of these. So, some analysts are saying that really these NIL rules could cement well-funded universities as sports powerhouses. So, for example, in 2021, a group of UT Austin alums started the Pancake Factory NIL Collective.
Interesting name.
So this group makes $800,000 available to the top 16 offensive and defensive linemen. So we're talking a pretty large, a good amount there. So the question is then about UTEP competing with some of those better funded groups.
Because at a certain point, it's no longer about educational attainment. There was always it was never exactly a secret, an open secret at best, about there being bigger schools, more availability, more resources available for an individual athlete, and the whole conversation going on to this point about boosters and let's just say out of reach financially, otherwise incentives being given to students. It was kind of almost an underground economy in its own right, which is part of the reason that this ended up coming out of like, okay, let's take this out of the shadows and into the what we do here. But so it becomes less of a, okay, is this a better school? Will I get better play time? Will it give me better opportunities? Into a, am I going to make more by signing with a bigger school as opposed to a small one? So that is absolutely a very sensible part of a, again, completely changing conversation.
Yeah, we actually asked Steve Haskins about this, and here's what he said. He said, some schools have collectives that are stronger or have a stronger base, and we're just going to have to overcome that and see if our city can pull together and get people more educated about what this is. And winning always helps.
Yeah, definitely does. That's what cement some of these reputations, but going forward with it, well, it'll be an interesting one to watch here. So seeing impact coming locally is very interesting indeed. So again, joining us right now has been Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., checking in with us as we do usually at the start of months, first Tuesday of the month, but again, had some slightly different schedules going on this time around. So of course, y'all have a lot more, and y'all do take, among other things, questions over on y'all's homepage, elpasoinc.com, if people want to look at other things and other questions about some of these topics and other ones going on in and around the area, right?
The platform's called Inquiries. You can go to elpasoinc.com, scroll down, you'll find it there, and you can submit questions, anything you're curious about here in El Paso.
Yep. So check them out there. So again, talking about all the things as much as we can cram into anyway about what's going on here today. So again, Robbie, do appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. And coming out of this break, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines as we normally do at this point during the program, even if, again, the social media situation is a little bit less tenable than usual. I think our provider is basically down today, but hey, you can supposedly hear us over there. But of course, if you want to chime in, leave your 2 cents on those platforms while listening to us on another one, I'm not saying it's the most wieldy thing either. I'm just saying that's, well, why we're up in so many ways as opposed to focusing on any one or the other. But we'll go ahead and take that next break right now. And if you want to get on that line and add your 2 cents, the number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned, y'all. All right, let me have to make one more adjustment over here. I'll walk out here in just a second, Robbie. All right. Whew. Never fun fighting with something on other technical issues while trying to run a show.
Yeah, I hope you're
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming, to be creating live radio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk, and yes, we are up currently, and well, should be, but in the meantime, there is still issues we're having with the last mile delivery solution, which is part of the reason that we do have all those options that we do in order to get at us. But we do have the comments still going on over there, including when it comes to the talk about the different options available to do things like entertainment around town. Our RJ saying the good old days when you went bowling, pinball, and shot a little pool. I mean, pool halls definitely still exist around town, though for a variety of reasons I don't go to them. I've never considered printing them being a major thing, and also conversations about what's going on with layers issues with it. And no, I've not been replaced with any AI. Just see some of the stuff still going on and screen with us there. So we'll talk about things going on here in the borderland, and of course, taking those phone calls as well. We're probably what we'll end up doing here, y'all, is because we still put this full show on within the studio here. You can't get it out of it at the moment. At least for the full video, we'll post the full video online a little bit later. So we've got like the number up on screen on our end, just isn't taking through to everyone else. So a lot of conversations, a lot of things to be talked about here, and yeah, at least some people like it's not the most ideal thing, but Buddy Via saying listening on AM, but then chiming in with us over on the social media. So it's a kind of a little bit of a double fisting it media experience. I get it, but hey, if that's what works for you, we appreciate people chatting. But we do have the phone lines open for that purposes here, so if you want to get on that line and your 2 cents, remember to stick around there. That's drop off. So there's a line available, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM is the number to call if you want to add your 2 cents. But in the meantime, let's dive straight into it. So there was one other thing that I wanted to mention in here, and that yeah, with the whole Speaker of the House kerfuffle going on, just a note from a Texas Tribune on that one. 3 Texas Republicans helped block Jim Jordan from becoming U.S. Speaker in that first vote with local Texas reps Jake Elsley, Gay Granger, and from the Texas 23rd Congressional District, Tony Gonzalez joining 17 other House Republicans to block the Ohio Republican from the gavel. So we ain't done with that one either. But in the meantime, let's go back to those phone lines now. Get 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We have Marco over in Central on the line with us here right now. Marco, thanks for joining us. Doing all right there. What's on your mind? Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yep, that's fair enough. has already been linked to would have been storm, earthquakes, and like yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, yeah. Like terraforming our earth, that's our design. Almost trying to already where the what is not trying to like change things by areas. It's just we're not doing a whole lot of good stuff for ourselves. That's now it's already knows with more directly. I have to say so. That's the thing. But that's why you know. I'm not saying that. I was out that's really close to the ground. They will super more final, be more final. That is they did that. That's all. They don't give it a chance. Barely see the shot at least when we're on order 6 when you mentioned that you like 110. But no, you're people should go from any case should get that deal. The full recap of both start work is worth it. Fair enough. Fair enough. The real American, the real American. That point. That point. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair. Fair. Mm, mm. Yeah, fair enough. That's really good. Chance to challenge that idea. It's a good one. It's a person that would be followed. We have a good one there. We have one there. That's the thing. We have a good one there. So we can wait out. We're going to take a next break. This break, we have more calls. We'll go to here. So we're going to say more. You're calls. On the line for one bill that are inclusive. It's 915 9876915 sign 18 SM. I have to before I talk about it.
TV, Andrew J. Polk. Should be up on pretty much all of those here at this point, though apparently we're having some issues with the video. It's just one of those days, y'all. So, okay, as has been the contingency, we haven't really had to do it before now. If for any reason you're not able to see or hear what the heck we got going on the social media, we're going to put up this full video afterwards as to kind of at least have somewhat of the archive, I do suppose. So, yeah, that'll work here. So that's the way we'll end up doing this, because I promised I hear, and I promised I'm in the studio, but just not coming through. And now we've just got a kind of a, well, it's no longer the blank screen at the very least. Anyway, for those of y'all over on our other mediums, none of this matters to you unless you go and check it out on the social media later on. In any case, let's get right back to those phone lines now. We do have, okay, that number is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. A lot of conversation going on some of the other things, including dealing with the areas around town. And RJ also saying that went to, back when he went to TJC and Tyler Southwest Conference, schools recruited a few of the star players and methods. Think SMU in the 80s that led to the death penalty. That's a story I'll have to look up. Remember, one guy had tutors and probably couldn't pass the 8th grade. The idea of sports comes first and school comes second is not how the statement goes for when it comes to student athletes. The student comes first. But again, some open secrets. And what's the more famous example I think of? A student athlete coming from a very modest background, suddenly driving an Escalade now that he's the star quarterback. Those kind of situations. Yeah, let's just put it that way. Anyway, more conversation going on there. But let's jump right back on those phone lines here. Again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Ben on the east side here with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Andrew. Just kind of wondering whether or not all these people that have all these ideas about building new venues downtown, all over the El Paso area, building things through these mountains and things of that sort, have they taken into account the amount of extra money we're going to have to pay to put into our roads and all the multi-level parking lots? The reinforcement is going to have to be taken into consideration. The cost that goes in that's going to have to be taken into it because of these new electric cars that weigh a lot more than what the gas-powered cars cost or weigh now. They're having problems with that in San Francisco right now, in Los Angeles. And does anybody even think about those kind of things?
Okay.
We're going to have
Sure.
a lot of roads that are going to have to be redone in El Paso.
Not to put words in anyone's mouth, but I will say that at least the discussions we've been having, or at the very least, okay, maybe not from some of Marco's plans being talked about, including drilling through the mountain, which is, yes, the shorthand and not accurate for what he's actually talking about, but like talking about like the downtown arenas being mentioned and of the possibility of other sites, including some of the Sun Metro ones, which could include becoming, part of the Union Depot, which would be its own whole kerfuffle, I have to say. It hasn't been explicitly mentioned, though I will have to say that, at least to my recollection, so someone correct me if I'm wrong on this one, that when it comes to, like with Southwest University Park, the downtown ballpark currently, I mean, sure, there were some multi-level parking structures. The one where locomotive number 1 is at the kind of the bottom of the road that leads right from the ballpark. That parking structure was already there. There has been at least one more major one that has come online, the one near the Paso del Norte Hotel. But for the most part, there wasn't much of it doesn't seem like. So again, I may have the wrong conception here. I'm not looking at like exact data on the change in parking availability in between the creation of the ballpark and the aftermath and up till now. But it didn't seem like there was that much change in, I mean, there are more buildings that demolished, but mostly like surface level parking lots coming in at that point. So my conception is that there wasn't that much of an immediate or a responsive change to like the ballpark coming in. At least that's the way it kind of seems to me. I mean, there were a couple of new lots. They turned that whole street that leads up to it into parking, but there wasn't like a ton of like building of parking garages around it that I seem to recall.
Well, any kind of multi-level parking lot is going to have reinforcements done. They're going to have to either tear it down or reinforce the concrete around it or something to take care of the extra weight that the cars are going to have. And again, I think one of the things that people should start talking about, and maybe Marco needs to think about this, maybe if he's going to be mayor, is wear and tear on all the roads in El Paso.
I mean, we already pay for that currently.
So we're going to have a lot of expense just with that.
I mean, we already pay for that currently. One of the major discussions that happens, and we've talked about this when it's come up in city council, at least sometimes previously. It's a little bit apocryphal to get into, but the franchise fee that comes from the Environmental Service Department. So essentially, the trucks that go around and do all the moving of our trash on the roads, that fee, a charge for that gets put from basically the roads department, roads and services, onto the environmental service. So it's sometimes referred to as essentially a backdoor tax. I want to say last time I checked, it was up to what, like $3 per, I don't know the actual unit of it here, but effectively they're saying that, hey, from the weight of these garbage trucks going around, it causes damages to the road. So we are going to then charge that to the environmental service department, of which then the environmental service department turns around and then applies to the, average taxpayer when it comes to your, it's mixed in with your, I believe, your water utility fee, if I'm not mistaken there. So that is a part of it. Another aspect would be even just the construction of if we're going to be seeing the advent of at least the current incarnation of electric vehicles, EVs, that basically each one of those parking spots would have to be, or at the very least a good portion of them, involving with charging stations. There actually was an expansion of charging stations I saw not too far, up the street here at the Westtown Marketplace. It seemed like Tesla, at least in one of the parking lots over there, was doing a big, like a several, if not like maybe like a half dozen rows of new charging infrastructure going on over there. And so, I mean, that's part of the concept for basically electric vehicles, is that for a lot of them, wherever you go, you need to be able to hook up. And so that would be another major conception of, maybe not exactly with the weight, but of the what is available in the infrastructure in these parking garages to make it a viable form of transportation.
Okay, you've talked about a lot of other things, but you have not talked about anybody saying anything about extra weight for the electric vehicles.
So, in short answer to your question, there's
a lot of
I haven't been
problems
able to
you've talked about right now,
yeah.
But nothing about the weight.
No, and that's a fair point as well. So to basically answer your question, no, I haven't really been heard this talked about with the idea of, I mean, the new venues that are coming along now. Of course, the development going on near Sunland Park, that's going to be largely having to build up the stuff around it anyway, because besides, I mean, there's huge parking areas around the racetrack itself, but for all these other venues, they're going to have to be building up their own from the ground up anyway. So we'll see if they take this into account. But to answer your question, no, I haven't really heard it being discussed in the way that you're mentioning it here anyway.
Okay. Maybe you might mention it to Marco, find out what if he's thought about that and the plans he's going to have to bring money into El Paso to take care of all those kind of problems.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, as we look at changes and at the very least the basic infrastructure required to do things, I mean, with gas stations no longer be able to fill up in 5 minutes and then move on, those a lot of different conceptions about at a certain point, once we get to a certain tipping point, about even how society works with the individual transportation revolution that we saw, early to middle of this century or previous century.
Okay. Well, stay well, stay safe. God bless. And let's go, Brandon.
All right. Well, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we're going to take another quick break right now. Coming out of this break, we got calls on the line. If you're on the line, stay there, because if you don't let us get to you, we can't get to you. But if you want to get on the line, one call ends, another call becomes available, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
With your KFOX 14 news update, I'm Liz DeWicki. An accident is under investigation after someone was hit by a car in downtown El Paso. It happened about 1 p.m. Tuesday afternoon on the 400 block of South Kansas Street near Paisano Drive. KFOX 14 is still working to learn more about the person who was hit. Meanwhile, I-10 is back open right now after another person was hit and killed by a car on Monday night. Police say it happened on I-10 heading westbound at Porfirio Diaz Street. They closed the highway down to investigate the crash. No word yet on the identity of the person who was killed. The early voting period for November 2023 uniform and special elections beginning Monday, October 23rd and ending Friday, November 3rd. Ballots for this election, including state propositions, the Village of Vinton, and Horizon Regional Municipal Utility District. There's a total of 32 countywide early voting locations for the convenience of voters, and hours of operation, of course, vary by location. You can find info on those voting locations under this story on our website, kfoxtv.com. With your KFOX 14 news update, I'm Liz DeWicki.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We got an injury accident reported eastbound North Loop Drive at Loma Land. Still seeing stop-and-go traffic on the I-10 westbound, but it's getting a little bit better. 7-minute delays, Hawkins to the Patriot. I-10 eastbound is slow from Vinton down to Artcraft with 10-minute delays. And you're seeing slowing southbound in the 54 from Stan Roberts down to Martin Luther King Boulevard. It's a 9-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Looking like a very warm one for our Wednesday. Mostly sunny, high around 90 for tomorrow. tomorrow afternoon. We'll see partly cloudy skies and our numbers not looking quite as cool Thursday and Friday. Upper 80s for your Thursday as well as for your Friday. Looking at the weekend, upper 80s to lower 90s. We may see a cool down, though, start to come into the borderland by early next week. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Get the appliances you need right away at Lowe's. Explore the largest assortment of brands you trust in-store or online at the best values. Plus, take advantage of their everyday financing offers. Lowe's knows home improvement, subject to credit approval.
Is your old car really scary? Does it smell dreadful? And run awful?
Wake up! El Paso, the nightmare is over. Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. We'll take your scary old trade, even if you owe thousands more than what it's worth, so you can upgrade to a new or certified pre-owned vehicle for less.
Plus, during Ram Power Days, get 0% APR for 72 months on 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Bighorn Crew Cab trucks. 2023 Jeep Gladiator trucks and Jeep Grand Cherokee take 10% off MSRP and $3,500 off MSRP on 2023 Dodge Charger and Challenger. Worried that your credit will make your car buying scary? Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat has partnered with even more lenders that will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect. Save thousands in only minutes at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. $13.89 per thousand finance includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Warning. If you are 60 or older, RSV can be a dangerous respiratory virus.
Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. This message is brought to you by Pfizer. This report is sponsored by Pfizer.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, via the many challenges, slings, and arrows of outrageous fortune we're dealing with today. But in any case, we still got a lot of ways you can get at us, including on-air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app. We're still taking the comments over on the social media, even if it's a little bit more beastly than usual. And also, of course, those phone lines open. Get on there squeeze in before the end of the show, 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. And, of course, Talk El Paso, brought to you in part by Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Of course, they've got their great big spooky season deals, including at 0% for up to 72 months on a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Edition for well-qualified buyers. See them for details over 950 Crockett Street, right across I-10 from former Sunland Park Mall, now the shops at Solana. But in any case, Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. And other commentary still coming in. I appreciate RJ toughing it out there, including taking issue, at the very least laugh, reacting to my saying of the student comes first, LMAO. I know, I get it. That's how it's supposed to work. May not always end up working. That mentioning about SMU having its issues with its program and still having never really recovered from that after some shutdowns from like the NCAA, among other things. So, okay, just to say there are ways things are supposed to work and ways they end up working, and sometimes the twain shall never meet. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines now. Again, 915-544-5876-544-KTSM. We do have Al calling from the northern part of the region here online with us here right now. So, Al, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello there. What's on your mind?
You know what? I've been listening for a while. Maybe I didn't listen from the beginning, but I haven't heard about these buildings that you guys are talking about that they've already been checked and that they do not have the withstanding weight that they need. I've been a truck driver for over 25 years, gone through back and forth all over this country, and I've seen a lot of buildings being built, and I always see that rebar frame that always goes up first, and I wonder always, isn't that enough? You know, I would think that I've even heard some of these buildings always were built to withstand more weight than people think. So I'm wondering about that.
I mean, and there are certain standards and certain, like, earthquake resistance here, but I mean, it has been estimated. I've seen it in a bunch of different ways, but referring to what comes up easily here, an Axios.com article from EVs are much heavier than gas vehicles, and that's posing safety problems from late April of this year. So the possibility of it being, and I've seen the estimates between 25 to 30% to a third heavier than standard vehicles are going to be that. No, it's not that. If you were to fill up, say, your standard parking garage with, all dualies or something like that, that would immediately collapse. But I mean, there is road usage and other considerations come along with it. I'm sure, as having been, are you talking about like an over the road, 16-wheeler kind of truck driver?
Yes,
Yourself?
18-wheeler.
18-wheeler. So, I mean, I recall before they did some of the concrete reinforcing out there in the Santa Teresa area where they specifically have that overweight cargo zone, that in some of those areas, that concrete and asphalt was just crumbling. So there are ways to address it and to deal with even overweight things like that, but it does take time and consideration in my mind.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen places where the concrete just crumbles, the asphalt crumbles. I guess they don't take into consideration how much traffic is going to be going by back and forth. So, yeah.
So, I mean, I guess we got changes coming on. I mean, was watching something the other day. Oh yeah, was it the good guys, the other guys, or some movie about that, about the kerfuffle around the catalytic converter back at that point in time. I mean, sure, that's a dramatization and well before my time, so I'm not qualified to comment on it. But I mean, there are changes that happen with the way things even work on the road, even in this day. So yeah, we'll see. But I think it's a valid question to ask about, has it been taken into consideration? And to my knowledge so far, unless there's been something I've seriously missed, the answer has largely been not so much, but we'll see if it comes to a head as an issue.
I agree. Okay, Andrew. Well, thank you. God bless.
No, sure thing. Thanks for supporting the call. Have a good one there.
You too.
All right, with that, I think we have time for at least one more call on the line here, squeezing in what we can. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right. I hit that submit button, and you advertised a star. If you hit the button, you become a star of Andrew J. Polk radio program. So I pushed that button, and I don't know whatever happened to it. But anyway, I clicked on your Facebook and said, what are you going to be talking about today? And it was something, and then it said, see more. And when I hit see more, the page went blank. I'll figure this thing out. I don't know what's going on with that stuff. This is ridiculous.
I don't think it's totally you today. Just that, frankly, we've been having some not so much fun with the social media today, so it may not be just you in this case. But I mean, we had to have a lot of things we've been talking about today, including issues surrounding the Land of Enchantment as well. But what was on your mind and want to talk about today?
Well, I want to say, what's going on locally? Forget about the standard stuff with everybody complaining about this and that. The biggest thing is this Mideast thing. And I would think it would be absolutely wonderful if you and even Amber, because she's got a lot of power, to go out and contact Veronica Escobar and also maybe my guy in the congressional district, Gabe Vasquez, get him on your program and talk about what their thought process is. Number one, about what's going on in the Middle East, and number two, about the speakership stuff, right? I think that would be very, very interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting one. I mean, on the Mideast, frankly, you got to get through the speaker stuff before you end up getting to those issues. And there's been some conversation on this here. I will say this, that, I haven't been paying as close. I mean, we had that first vote go by where, as was noted that even some Texas Republicans weren't totally on board with Jim Jordan getting that first ballot vote through. So we'll see what happens there. Though I will say that particularly for Veronica Escobar, but also given Gabe Vasquez also being on the Democrat side of the aisle, I think that they were going primarily for Hakeem Jeffries most recently, but I'll have to double check what they ended up doing with this most recent vote. So whether or not there's a grand bargain at play, maybe out of their hands or outside the realm of possibility at this particular point in time.
Okay. I just mentioned two Democrats. Your gal, your great gal, she's very gorgeous, by the way. And then Gabe, both Democrats. Okay, for a balance point, I'll leave it up to you to pick two conservatives to balance it out and have it. I mean, it would be so much fun to listen to. Well, let me say this on my last comment. I just thought of something that would be kind of fun, exercise, mental exercise, if you will, to you and everybody else out there, so whatever. And I'm going to call it the tidbit aspect, right? Now, Let's just use as an example. Back in 1912, the Titanic sank on its maiden voyage. So the biggest point is there were a number of issues that contributed to that. But the biggest thing, and here's the thing on the tidbit point, what is the ultimate key issue that caused it? And you can transfer that thought process into what's going on right now in the Middle East. What is the key point that's causing this? And I'm not talking about right now. Go backwards as far as you can. What was the key person, key issue that started this whole thing? And this is a fun exercise, mental exercise.
Okay.
A lot of fun for everybody out there that wants to think about it. Chime in and say, hey, Andrew, I got the idea. This is the person who started this mess in the first place. It'll be a lot of fun. What do you think of that?
I think that would be a conversation for some very dedicated history programming at a certain point, because I mean, sure, the Titanic, there's a couple of people or instances that come to mind. It could be either the lookout who didn't call for the iceberg soon enough, could be the captain of the ship that asked them to end up being able to get to New York earlier, so got them faster. Could have been the weather services predictors by not accurately predicting the weather that would lead to more icebergs. Could have been the guys the architect who didn't build the bulkheads high enough, and that's just from the movie version. I'm remembering there's probably more specifics of reality coming to mind here, but that's just from one damn ship. If we're trying to get into what has been the geopolitical nightmare of the good chunk of the last century, good chunk of the start of this one so far, that's, well, if you're able to come to a concrete and mostly agreed upon answer on that one, you'd probably be able to collect several consecutive Nobel Peace Prizes.
No, I get you. There were contributory aspects relative, at least, to the Titanic. But I'm talking about if you drill it down to its nth degree, there's one specific point of what happened that would have never caused the Titanic to sink, or never caused the Middle East aspect to happen, or never caused the Donnie Dotard doofus of ever becoming president. This is what I'm talking about. I think this would be a fun mental exercise. That's what I'm talking about.
All that comes to me is the quote from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In the beginning, the universe was created. This made a lot of people very unhappy and has been widely regarded as a bad move. That's about the best I'm going to come up with at the moment anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what. I just think it would be fun because everybody's out there, the Southwest border, everybody's brain going into overdrive and starting saying, because we as humans are superior relative to our thinking process. And use your brain to figure out stuff so we don't have to go up with these stupid problems that we've got. And that may be a lot of fun. I'm just saying, try it out. I would call it the tidbit aspect. The tidbit, and when I call you, I'm going to throw out another tidbit. Well, what do you think of that?
Oh, fair enough. More than welcome to do so. We'll appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Okay, Andrew. Take care.
All right, and with that, we do have to take that last break right now. After this break, Taylor, we got coming up for you on the show, and hopefully dealing with the social media implications we got going on for you right now. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at Hawkins, an earlier accident has 2 left lanes blocked, causing a 6-minute backup. Slow traffic on the 54 south, Stan Roberts down to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. It's a 40-minute delay. I-10 eastbound slow from Trans Mountain to the Patriot, and 10-minute delays there. On the loop northbound in the East Valley, I-10 up to Montana is a 5-minute delay. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. Get the appliances you need right away at Lowe's. Explore the largest assortment of brands you trust in-store or online at the best values. Plus, take advantage of their everyday financing offers. Lowe's knows home improvement, subject to credit approval.
Hey guys, this is Andrew J. Polk. My not-so-secret way of looking and feeling great is going to Hammer and Nails, El Paso's newest men's grooming destination, with everything about your personal grooming, privacy, and comfort in mind. Ready with your favorite drink at the door? They offer everything from head to toe, hair, beard, mustache, and hand and foot services. You want to find out about their full services and their great memberships. Of course, find them online, hammerandnailsgrooming.com. That's hammer, A-N-D, nailsgrooming.com. And I'll see you there. Keep your family and livelihood safe with a stable security system from Mazer Security Alarms. Your trusted El Paso security experts since 1982. You can get the best. Systems start at under $35 per month with upfront purchase to lease options and $0 down payment packages available. Get the peace of mind you deserve with Mazer Security Alarms. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033. Mazer Security Alarms.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Yeah, we've had some of those technical issues, particularly with the online versions here today, but don't worry. We'll, as soon as we can, get the full version, or the full as we ended up getting it, online for you all. But so you can still see the full show if you really want to do it that way. But we'll, of course, be back up tomorrow in all the ways that we intend to be anyway. And, of course, coming up for you, some of those interviews, including tomorrow on the program. It's going to be featuring the interview we have with County Commissioner Carlos Leon, whose office has not the only one decision makers. County commissioners voted on it, but he would arguably be the spearhead behind that gun buyback event. So I was able to get a few questions from him about how it'll work, and then also some of the reasoning behind it, and some of the questions y'all been bringing up about the efficacy, about the reason to go through this, and if it'll be having an effect, and what success ends up looking like for an event like that. So that coming up tomorrow for you on the program. In the meantime, we'll have to leave it there today, out of time for this program. I do want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show if you were able to do so over on the social media and the challenges with it today. We'll do it again tomorrow, as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. So until then, until next time, I want to encourage y'all to stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.